Hey guys, back again looking at another Girls and Panzer kit. This time we're doing something a little bit different and looking at a rather unusual subject with the 1/35th scale Platz Type 2 Amphib tank. Let's open her on up and take a look. So, right away, one of the things we'll immediately be greeted with is the boat section parts, which in reality you could really say this kit can be broken down into three sections: the fore section, the mid section, and the aft section. And right here we're starting with the fore section, consisting of the main bow parts split into two halves. Thankfully, they split it down right along a weld seam in the structure. Hopefully this will show up. As you can see, this midpoint is a weld bead, so you'll be able to disguise the any gluing there quite convincingly. So that's a very big plus, I would say, on parts of Platts in their design. Now, this particular part took me a minute to figure out exactly what part it was for. It's actually main aft section consisting of the hookup points for the control systems for the amphibious portion. And this obviously section will connect into the rest of the tank, but interesting little bit right there. Moving on, we've got our main lower hull portion for the midsection, basically consisting of the main tank portion. For all the riveting is convincing and excuse me, works quite well. Next up, we have the upper section. Again, much the same as below. Obviously, though, a lot of panels a lot of hatches and other parts will need to be added in. Continuing on, we do have some of those as well as some other detail portions consisting of a lot of the excuse me, hatches and other sections build up for the amphibious parts. Moving on, we've got a lot of the center sections detail parts, including some of the parts to build up the main cannon, including the barrel, which thankfully they did as a single piece assembly as opposed to two barrel halves, as well, and an additional machine gun mount. Overall, you do get a surprising amount of internal detailing, despite a lot of it ultimately going to be sealed off. But it is nice that they do include it and give you that option. Next up, we've got a lot of the decking parts that attach the bow section and aft section. You can very much start to see the shape of the amphib parts once it starts coming together. More decking as well as some of the aft portions to build up. Still more decking. Now we're getting into more of the hatches and other detail parts, as well as some of the suspensions for the track portions. Now we get into the meat of the amphib with the props, which are nicely done, though a little on the thin side, so that is something to be aware of when you go to cut them out. Better to cut them out a little further back just to make sure you don't damage them. Beyond this, on this sprue, we got a couple more odds and end parts for detailing up various components, more hatches, and so forth. We also got two of the spare fuel tanks, always necessary to have. Next, we got the main front armor panel, which was absent from the center piece. Obviously, holes for all the other stuff that needs to go in. A couple other odds and end parts, more paneling, a lot more suspension parts that go in. Almost done. Next up, we finally get into the meat of the track portions. All of our road wheels, idler sprocket, and some more of the suspension parts. Overall, again, casting quality is quite nice. Hopefully some of the detailing does show up here. And lastly, we do have a repeat sprue of more road wheels. You do get a small fret of clear parts. I do think it's impressive some of the smaller detailing they did on the lights. Give it a little more detail. Now, interestingly, they chose to do the commander's cupola in two sections. The main section that you would see on the Nova version of a tank, plus this extension section to go on top of that. Make sure I get the parts lined up. Now, I'm surprised they didn't just do this as a single piece assembly, but I guess they were trying to save on cost and just do this separate add-on. Treads are 2 rubber style tracks. Overall, I mean, if you've worked with this type of track before, nothing really new to add. You do get 2 frets of photo etch for some of the additional grills and grates, which is a nice inclusion. Additionally, you do get this run of copper wiring for some of the tow cables, which, again, another great inclusion. Lastly, we've got our decal sheets, single marking option, nothing really to say too much there. Give me a second to get all these back in, and we will move on to the instructions. So, getting into the instructions. Again, since you're technically building both a boat and a tank in this one, the build assembly is a little more complicated. Obviously, you need to build up both the tank parts and the boat parts. So that is something to be aware of and pay careful attention to, especially for alignment issues in here, especially for when you attach the bow and aft sections. Beyond that, once you get through there, the turret has a little bit more complications since you do technically build up the full gun assembly. So that is something to be aware of and plan for. And after that, it's basically just getting the treads on and painting. Again, single marking option for one tank. Now, not a lot I can really add there. So, overall, this is an interesting one. Obviously, the added complexity of needing to build, in essence, 2 different subject matters and bringing them together is going to present a little bit of a challenge. So that is something to be aware of and to plan for. Beyond that, though, I mean, you don't really encounter amphib tanks all that often. So, if nothing else, I'd say it's worth picking up just for the fact that it's an oddball subject matter. Is it one that's going to be for everyone? Probably not. But, if you're looking for an oddball subject, it's not a bad option. Granted, there is some complexity to the build sequencing, but, if you've built a couple tanks before, or any models really, if you have a few under your belt, then you might look at doing this one. So that was a look at Platz's 1/35th scale Type 2 amphib tank in grills and Panzer markings. Oddball kit with some complexity to it, but could be a fun one. So, until next time.